Good morning. It's Thursday, February 16th. We are going to spend our entire day, with the exception of some voting on UVM trustees and Sergeant at Arms, on various healthcare compacts. We are having this conversation in a slightly funny order because of various staffing and timing issues. And so we've walked through H77 and H86 with Legislative Council on Tuesday, which gave us a sense of those two bills, the slight differences between them, and sort of the big picture of what a compact is. And we are walking through H62 after we hear from you, Lauren, at 10 o'clock. And then Nolan is going to talk us through the fiscal impacts this afternoon after lunch. But I think the bulk of the questions that we're going to have for you, we managed to come up with between H77 and H86. And so I think really happy to have you here. So would love if you could start with a little bit big picture, but then I think we sort of have some specifics that I shared with you in advance.
Sure. Thank you so much. And for the record, Lauren Hibbert, Deputy Secretary of State. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about compacts. I did file some written testimony that I'm not going to share with the committee on my screen, but I trust you all are able to follow along. Big picture, and I'm sure this was discussed with Legislative Council in your overview with them. Big picture, compacts are contract between states, and there's lots of compacts in our life. And I think the driver's compact is the most relatable compact that we all use every day. It allows us to have a home state driver's license, and then to use that home state driver's license to drive in the other compact states. On a very high level, that is the same concept as the occupational licensure compacts. There's a home state where someone has a compact license to practice a profession, and then they're given authorization to practice in other states because those states are part of the same agreement, same contract. I'm sure you heard from Legislative Council, it is really contracty, so we can't actually change specific words on the page as much as some of the other legislation that passes through your building. So again, the concept of the home state is really crucial because that's where the licensee obtains the compact state. And for the most part, the way that we analyze what is your home state, it's your primary residence, it's where you vote. And then there are two different models of what you're able to do once you have your home state compact license in terms of how you can start practicing. The first model is you can just begin practice immediately in all compact states. And the second is that you have to ask the compact commission for permission. Let me just say that again, because it's kind of a tongue twister. You have to ask the compact commission for permission to practice in another sister compact state. And the majority, all of the compacts that are before you today are that latter model. Some of those contemplate a fee paid to the compact commission, and I'll get into that. Before I go much further, I just want to talk about the public policy reasons why compacts are a good idea. Compacts are really effective tools for mobility, for people to be able to come in a workforce shortage. For small states, they're really important. They have fiscal impacts for small states too, which I'll get into, but for small states, they're really important. So in the beginning of COVID, I spent considerable time in the room that you guys are all sitting in because it used to be House Health. And it was early days, and like thinking back on it, it's crazy because we were jammed in there trying to figure out what we needed to do around licensing. Particularly, our problem was, think of an institution like Dartmouth, where Hitchcock, where the majority of the eastern side of the state receives healthcare. And what happens is it was totally fine before COVID because the patient would drive across the river and sit in Dartmouth Hitchcock's hospital and receive their healthcare. Well, with COVID and the resulting lockdowns, patients weren't driving across the river. And all of a sudden, immediately, people needed to have a license in Vermont in order to practice telehealth. So compacts solve that problem because anyone who's licensed in New Hampshire who's part of a compact then is able to practice fairly seamlessly in Vermont with that compact license. So it really resolves telehealth, and it really helps people who live on the borders of small states be able to live in one state and practice in another state without having to obtain 2 licenses. So because of that, compacts do generally reduce revenues. And we absolutely have seen that in the nurse licensure compact. Because what happens is the non-resident who's practicing here previously would have had to obtain a license in Vermont. So if there's someone who's working at NVRH in St. Johnsbury and he lives in New Hampshire and he travels across the river and comes to work, before the nurse licensure compact was enacted, he probably had a license in New Hampshire and a license in Vermont. But now that the nurse licensure compact is enacted, he probably would only have a license in New Hampshire. So because of our size, because of our porous borders, and because we've got some big states beside us who participate in compacts. Now, I'll just say New Hampshire is really what I'm talking about. Massachusetts is not a high compact participator. They don't jump into compacts, and there's a lot of discussion in the compact world about New York. New York probably will be one of the very last states in the nation to become part of the compact. And if you're interested in my theories about that, I'm happy to go into it, but they're really just theories. Here in OPR, the majority of our professionals come from New York, Massachusetts, or New Hampshire. So when we are looking at compacts, we're really thinking about losing the New Hampshire licensees and the licensees in other states that belong to the compact. So as I go down, you'll see it. We have some graphs that show where the compacts are enacted for each of these specific compacts, and then our back of the napkin, well, a little bit more than back of a napkin, that underestimates the amount of work that's gone into what's before you. Our analysis of the licensees in our system and our calculations of how much revenue we will lose. And I'm going to, if the committee has a lot of really complicated fiscal questions, I would ask you to ask Nolan, because we have been working with Nolan on this with Joint Fiscal quite a bit. And just thank you, Nolan, for all of your help. The other piece to consider is in thinking about revenue and revenue loss is it does affect our enforcement costs. We are responsible for the conduct of professionals that live within our state, that are working within our state, even if they do not have a license here. So the typical model, and the model that you guys have heard me talk about when in the discussion of fees, is our licensees pay a fee. That fee covers the administrative and enforcement costs for the profession. Well, in a compact model, the compact folks who are practicing in Vermont without a license are not paying a fee to us. That's the same as the in-state fee. And, but we still have enforcement authority over them, and we still need to take enforcement action over them if there's unprofessional conduct that's committed within our state, sort of under our watch is a way to think about it. And so the cost of that enforcement, we don't have a way to recoup through fees to the compact individuals. There is the possibility for also complicated IT modifications depending on the choices that the office makes in terms of how much do we want our system to integrate with all of these independent and specific compact systems. You know, we do have to modify our system there's a default modification that needs to happen because we're going to have to create a new path for the compact license, a new way for someone to apply for that. So we always have to contemplate some IT change, but then the next question really is, how big of an IT change do we need to make? Do we want these systems to be talking to each other without staff involved? Do we want the compact data to come flowing into our system? Do we want to push our system data out? Those APIs, automated processing information, I believe is what that's called. I just call them APIs because I'm now a computer nerd, but the APIs, are expensive to build. And if we are really serious about reducing staff time and making this as seamless as possible, that is the path we should choose. It also just is the most expensive path. And given where the office is in terms of budget, it would probably not be the path that we would move forward on. I do not anticipate that we would need another staff person, another position if we were to implement any of these compacts. What I really want to do is we have 3 positions, 2 licensing positions and an enforcement position that we've been given last year by the legislature that we have not filled given our budget. And I would want to contemplate filling one of those positions. So just as the bill has been moving, I don't think we need an additional position added. I do think that entering these compacts probably would bring us into a position where it was more of a necessity to fill those positions, well, at least one of those positions. So does anyone have any questions on just compacts or what I've already talked about before I jump into a specific compact and what we are seeing ahead of us in terms of the consequences of joining the compact?
I have trying to make sure that because we sort of broke up testimony in a funny way for these 3 bills, that I'm staying in the right buckets. So I think I'd love to save the conversation about the cost of implementation, which I do have questions about for when Nolan joins us and we're walking through the fiscal notes. So I'm going to stay sort of bigger picture about the compact with you now. So in the legislative language we looked through yesterday on 77 and 86, the language regarding how fees were applied to individuals who are members of the compact was very vague. And I personally felt uncomfortable with that. And so I would love to hear more about your thinking on that piece. The part about the fee for the state to be part of the compact I feel more comfortable with the vagueness of that. But the sort of cost to individual healthcare providers in this context. Yeah.
So all 3 of these compacts are compacts where the home state sets the fee and the legislature, or in some states, the director or the governor sets the fee. There's different structures out there. But in Vermont would have control over setting the fee for a physical therapist who's licensed in Vermont. Vermont's the home state for the PT. We would set the fee. You would set the fee. The issue that I believe you're referring to is that Vermont compact physical therapist now wants to practice in Connecticut. I don't know if Connecticut's part of that compact. I don't have that map memorized, but that PT wants to go practice in Connecticut. They need to contact the Physical Therapy Compact Commission and they pay a fee to the Compact Commission that's separate from our fee. They've already paid our fee. That's separate from our fee, and says, I want permission to practice in Vermont. And Vermont would receive, or Connecticut, in my example, Connecticut would receive some of the fee that the Vermont physical therapist has paid to the Compact Commission. So let me put that example in the reverse. So we're part of the Compact. A Connecticut physical therapist pays the Connecticut fee for physical therapy, but then they decide there's a great opportunity in Vermont. I want to practice in Vermont. So they would contact the Compact Commission, tell the Compact Commission, I want to pay the fee to practice in Vermont. They would pay that to the Compact Commission, and we would receive a portion of that fee. And we have a voice in setting what that fee is. For the PT Compact, which is why I chose the PT Compact, the majority of states have set that fee at $50. That's the state portion of that fee.
Yeah, Representative Anthony.
I totally agree. It's the privilege fee that was sort of squishy, and it wasn't clear from the document what the apportionment between the site where the person would work as opposed to the commission or compact administration, how that would work out. And yes, we would have a vote, but of course the board is composed of every one of the members. And so one vote out of, say, 30 is not necessarily reassuring in terms of the ability to contribute, if you will, to the administration of the compact from the home licensing state. And that was my, what was unsaid in the document, what just raised some flags for me. But thank you.
No problem. My understanding is that the compact fee is set in our statute. The compact privilege fee is set in our statute, but I need to confirm that, and I will do that.
So my question, sort of as a follow-up to that, Lauren, is the language in the bill in front of us is really quite vague. And my understanding is there was something mentioned about how we sort of all need to follow the same language in all the compacts. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about what the implications are of changing that language and where sort of the edges are of changing that language. Or if other states add sort of a second piece of statute that's outside of that language in order to create their fees.
That's the piece, Madam Chair, that I need to investigate. My understanding is that states create a separate piece of language to create the fees, and that we cannot modify that language that is, I agree, ambiguous.
Okay, I think before we can take any action on any of these, we need to understand that much better.
Okay.
Representative Andrews, do you?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the testimony that you sent over, Lauren, and your explanation about how the privilege to practice fees work. So
Yes.
It feels like when I look at what you sent over and you've got each sort of bill broken down, and then on one of them, under the mental health counselor, you have revenue gain unknown. You just described physical therapy to us where there would be revenue gain from those fees. And then the audiology one doesn't have any revenue gain on at all. So I just, could you take why that is?
Yeah. So the reason is, and there's a little bit of a different structure in those graphs, so that's part of it. But the reason also is you're seeing these compacts at different stages of their creation. So the mental health counselor compact is the newest, most baby compact. So we really don't have any sense of what other states are going to be charging and how for that privilege to practice fee. And we don't have any, they haven't done rulemaking. They are really at the ground floor, which is a good thing from our perspective. And I didn't talk about the effect of Dobbs in OPR's analysis. And I'm just putting a pin in that because I know that's not your question, but I'm going to come back to it. So for the mental health counselor, I have no sense of what other states are thinking about in terms of the fee to states for the privilege to practice. The physical therapy compact is the most established of these three. It's currently in 33 states. It's really very well cooked. And so it's pretty easy to see that the average fee is $50 that states receive. So we are putting ourselves, again, estimating, but that's what we would probably advocate to do. And so it's easier to see the fiscal offset of that privilege to practice fee. And then the audiology and speech language compact is in between the two. There's 23 states that have joined. They have already started the drafting of bylaws and initial rules, but they haven't adopted them. And they haven't begun issuing compact licenses yet, meaning there's 23 states in, but there's nobody in the nation who has a speech language pathologist compact license right now. Those will begin being issued in 2023, probably I'm hearing the November of 2023. So it really is, you're seeing compacts at different stages of growth, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you.
Lauren, speech language pathologists, if they're working in a school in Vermont, they have to have 2 licenses.
That's correct.
One from education and one from OPR. What
That
about,
is correct.
so what if someone from another state utilizes a compact and comes in here? That person would still have to get a license from education.
Right. Yes, we call that the Agency of Education's endorsement is what that is, the educator endorsement. Yes.
That's not part of this.
That is not part of this. They would still need to obtain that.
Yeah.
At a break, because I'm confused too. Or not exactly sure where we're going. Let me try to do a little diagram up here on a whiteboard about interstate compact Vermont, who pays for what, in what order. Just so, since I function better when I'm visually oriented and I can see what I'm doing, I'll try a crack at that and anybody can help. And if it's not right, we'll fix it. And it'll just be useful for trying to eliminate some of the confusion.
I would love if you could ask some questions about your confusion, because I think Lauren's ability to participate in a whiteboard exercise from the Zoom might be a little compromised.
Yeah, no, I meant
Yeah.
that just a couple of us trying to do a draft on a whiteboard and then we can share with you, Lauren, and you can say, no, that's not right.
Lauren, are you able to see our whiteboard?
I can see the whiteboard, but I don't know whether, is there anything written on it currently? Because if there is, I cannot see that.
Yeah, so I think maybe that won't, I don't know if that will work, but let's,
It
Do
was
you have a-
meant,
yeah.
it's meant maybe to be a tabletop exercise.
Okay.
For those around the committee who are also concerned about vague language.
Mhm.
You know, not to make your work more difficult, Laura, just to try to bring us to a point where we all think we see the same thing, that's all.
Representative.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I understood that we first maybe even need clarity about whether we can change this language. And so I'm wondering, does it make sense to sort of work on language if one option or one response is we can't change it if we want to be a part of the compact?
I do think that our next Deb, we can dive into some of the other pieces of this, but in order to, the conversation about the fees and who pays the fees, I think we do need to understand what the limits of changing language are, and then what, if there's sort of a separate piece of statute that we need to add to get clear on what that statute is and to have a drafter in the room with us to draft that statute. And Lauren, it seems like there are the two separate fees. There's any changes we're making, there would be sort of the new fee for, I guess that's a question. Are you envisioning that we would change the fee for Vermont licensees?
Outside, as a response to the compact projections,
Yes.
no.
Okay.
I don't think that we should do that with any of these. I think we should be aware of them, but I think what we should be doing is looking at the analysis that we're doing on OPR fees in general. And then we need to have a better sense of who we've actually lost. And that's part of the process of what we're doing right now with the nursing compact. When we implemented the nursing compact, we did not change fees as a result of joining the nursing compact. Now we know, or we're getting a better sense come the end of March, how many licensees we've lost and the fiscal impact on us, which is significant. And that is being factored into the fee adjustments that I've talked to this committee about previously.
And so what we do need then is statute setting the fee for joining for Vermonters joining the compact. Or for people in other states who want to practice with the compact in Vermont.
That is my understanding, is that set out in statute, yes.
Okay. And do you have a proposal on how much you want that to be?
For physical therapy, our proposal is $50 because that seems to be the average. We want to be careful that we don't make it so that there's a disincentive to coming and practicing in Vermont. But we also want to make sure that we are able to adequately cover or at least try to cover our losses because we're not licensing those folks.
And what about 86 and 62?
For those, I don't have a proposal because, and I think most states have not put that into their statutes yet, but I will triple confirm that because the states are so new, because the compacts are so new.
So what we could put into statute is sort of a trigger, statutory language that when the compact becomes sort of fully functioning, X number of states have joined, then our fee will kick in at this rate. And then if we need to amend that fee in the future, we could do that. But passing them with nothing feels.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I would support that approach. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Representative Anthony?
Yes, following what you folks have said, Representative Simpson, yourself, I think a statute which I would view as interstitial, that is to say, in response to the vagueness, we would simply say we'll backfill the vagueness with saying that the privilege fee in Vermont for any of these, and then we would list the 4 or 5 or 6 is X. And as you've said, we could always revise that when things gel. And if Lauren believes that one of them should not be set at the benchmark at the moment of $50, then we should know that. But otherwise, we could just do them all at $50 to start with and get off the ground and find out what the repercussions are. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a question. So we are not making ends meet now with the nursing compact, right? How are we picking up the missing funds? Are we getting that money from some other source, general fund?
No. I think the best analogy, the way that I've been thinking about it, is the cost of operation of OPR is similar to a vacation home. And you decide to go on a vacation with 10 people. And 2 days before, 2 of those people decide to pull out of the vacation. And instead of making the people who decided to pull out of the vacation pay for their share of the vacation home, you just then take instead of dividing it by 10, you divide it by 8. And that's what's been happening with compacts is, the cost of operation has stayed consistent, if not growing. And we are losing licensees. So if you think back to my presentations on how we allocate the costs of the administration of OPR to our licensees, we take our total costs and we divide it by our number of licensees. If we lose licensees, then the cost to each licensee goes up across our entire program, not even just across a single program. So it doesn't even stay within a single profession. And then that's how we've been managing. I absolutely think there is a conversation that needs to be had about if the state wants to do very good public policy, health policy work around compacts, which I think they should do. I think we should do. Compacts are a great benefit to the professionals, to the workforce, and ultimately then to Vermonters. But there is a cost, and I do think that there should be a general fund allocation in response to that cost at some point.
Gee, that sounds awfully complicated. And so if something happened and we had more nurses come in, would those folks get money back? Those who had to pay more because they didn't go on vacation?
No.
They would not get money back.
Yeah.
But the remaining 8 who went on vacation would have to pay more? Is that what you meant?
That's right. So specifically on the nursing compact, the cost of the administration of OPR, enforcement, staff, IT, used to be supported by something like 26,000 nurses, and we are anticipating almost a third loss of registered nurses. So that is a huge amount of loss, and we knew that was going to happen. We wrote a report about it. We polled all of the nursing community. We sent a survey to every registered nurse in Vermont, talking to them about the costs and benefits of the compact, including the fiscal costs, and told them that, if we join the compact, we may have to raise fees. And how do you feel about that? And of course, nobody likes the concept of fees being raised, but the compact was fairly well supported by a significant majority of nurses who reside in Vermont. So it's been compacts and the analysis of the fiscal impacts on OPR. We've been trying to be as transparent as possible because we are a model that relies on numbers and fees by number, volume of number. Anytime we reduce the number of our licensees, we're reducing our revenue. But that doesn't necessarily, and sometimes it's the converse, it doesn't reduce our costs because we have to implement a new pathway in our system. We still have to do enforcement. So the costs don't necessarily reduce, but our fees do.
Okay, thank you.
And Lauren, I just want to confirm that you're, sort of building on that question that you're still working on, and we're still planning on having a conversation sometime this biennium about what to do about the particular professions that it will become increasingly unreasonable to expect them to cover their costs. Okay, thank you. Representative Anthony.
Only to flesh out, if you will, Representative Brannigan's understanding. I think it is true. I, for one, let me speak that way. I believe there's a general benefit to having a administered OPR office, which cannot be reduced to allocating amongst the fees. And then the question for me, ethically or equitably, is what's the share of the operation of OPR that is a contributor to the general good? And then that's a benchmark for how, what the fees have to pick up if it's not within the proportion of general benefit to the population.
I think that's a great framing for how we think about fees in general. I think it feels to me in many cases, there are things that we are providing that are a general benefit to the public. And I have sort of real equity concerns about funding that exclusively through fees, and appreciate the opportunity to continue to explore that as we work on a fee bill.
Mm-hmm. And I know, just to build, I think when we had the conversation about judiciary fees, I think a lot of us were uncomfortable with the idea that some of those might just continue growing in order to cover the cost in sort of a similar way that it seemed unlikely with the nurses. Lauren, what else would you like to share with us? I think we have given you some degree of homework about sort of where it would be appropriate to add statute to set those fees. I think we need to get closer to an estimate about the increased cost for you, just so we can make sure we're sharing that with the body.
Yeah. And I think I've stayed a little bit away from that, but it is in my testimony, and Nolan will be able to fill in some of those estimates of cost for the office. But you can see the revenue that we're losing on each of the pie chart slides for each profession. One thing that is a benefit of all three of these compacts to an extent is the impact. Again, we're losing about a fourth or a third of each of these professions because of joining the compact, but it's a much smaller number of licensees on whole total. So it will have comparative to the nursing compact, it will have a smaller impact on the OPR budget on whole.
And I appreciate that, and I think you laid that out. The increased cost of administration in your office. If you could, you talked about computers or not computers, and maybe not needing another person. And can you dig into that a little bit?
Yes, I can. So staffing. What I would want to be able to do is to fill a position that I already have. So there's not an additional position request in any of these bills or in the OPR bill. So that would be approximately $100,000 per year for a licensing administrator once you figure in the contract increases and the benefits and the pension. It's really 85 to 100, depending on the level of service and who we get in recruitment. So I think that would be an estimated staffing cost. For the IT system, I could build with our IT system a beautiful system that would communicate back and forth seamlessly without any staff time, with ease for the applicants. And that would be about $1 million of build. That is not on the table for us. And so I think what we would do is we would need to create two pathways in our system. One for the home state person who was applying for a compact, and then one for the out-of-state person who wanted to practice here, so we knew who was here. And that cost is much lower. And I think it would be, it's significantly lower. I think it would be, in the $30,000 range for all three of these compacts. But
You mean
It's-
$30,000 each or $30,000 total?
total.
Okay, thank you.
But it's suboptimal. But it is the solution that we would implement.
If you implement that solution and in the future, we have lots of compacts and it makes sense to implement the bigger, better solution, would that have been sort of sunk costs or would that be, would the 30,000 be sort of useful along the way?
Half of it would be useful and the other half would not. So it would be
Okay.
useful for the home state compact licensees. We're going to have to create, I want to apply for, I'm just going to use PTs. I want to apply for, I'm a PT, I'm coming for the first time in Vermont. Do I want a single state license or do I want a compact license? There's a whole pathway in the computer that needs to help the person decide which they're going to apply for and accomplish that. And that would not be sunk costs because regardless of the long-term better, best solution, we would still need that pathway. The sunk cost would be for the person who wanted just privileges in our state.
You mentioned that you would have to fill a position that's already vacant. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I would want to do.
How long has that position been vacant?
We received 3 positions last year in last year's session. So I believe that 1 was effective on passage and 2 were effective July 1st, and they've been vacant since that time.
Okay, just July 1st of this year, so.
That's correct. And that's because we were very concerned about budget and we've been making decisions every day to try and reduce our budget deficit. And it did not feel fiscally responsible to hire those positions. But just for this committee's perspective, 1 was related to massage therapy. And we've actually, that position, I apologize. I apologize. 1 was related to mental health. We really need another licensing administrator to help us with processing of mental health applications. They're very complicated. There are applications that take the longest. And they, so we asked the legislature for a position, and that was an H661. I forget the ultimate bill act number. And then we had 2 positions in the home contractor bill. 1 was for enforcement of home contractors, and 1 was for licensing of home contractors. And we have not filled any of those 3 positions.
Okay, actually, I said July of this year when I meant last year.
Correct, July of 2022. 22, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Representative Kernaghan.
So have you been able to fill any new positions in recent years, say the last 5 years?
Yes, we, that's where I confused myself. We did fill a position with massage therapy. We received a position and we did fill it. And that was it was before COVID. So that was in 19, that was in 20. That was during COVID.
Only that 1 position is new, the rest, there's been no new hires?
Yes, I'm just thinking, yes. We have not had any new hires. I believe if you're interested in our staffing levels, and I can provide data on that, I know I have it. But I believe that we added 3 or 4 positions in between 17 and 19, but since then we have not added new positions. And again, we have to come to the legislature to request a position. And unless we were to pull a position out of the position pool, but we have not done that at OPR.
I would like to see those numbers if I could.
Absolutely, I'm happy to provide them.
Okay.
Any other questions from you? Lauren, anything else you want to share with us?
No, I definitely am grateful for the homework. I'll start working on it. And thank you for the conversation. I am fairly tied up in this Secretary of State's conference. So if there are specific questions, this I guess is an ask for you, Nolan. If there are questions that come up out of your presentation, please send me emails. I'll monitor my email very closely. And but I won't be watching this stream, and I'll watch it on double time later. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lauren. And we're going to be talking to Katie about what that outlying language might look like.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Thanks. Nolan, do you want to take us through your 4 memos? In 15 minutes? Sorry, that's sort of a joke. Will you take us through your cover memo in the next 15 minutes before Katie arrives?
Yes.
Did you hear what I just said?
I did. I didn't.
Cool. Okay.
For me.
Great. Thanks.
Sure, I can take you through the cover memo. For the record, Nolan Langwell, the Joint Fiscal Office. If you should all see online, I have 3 fiscal notes, and I just have a memo that just sort of sums it all up in one place. And if you look at the chart, this is working with the Secretary of State's office to get a sense of what the impact of each of the what the estimated revenue loss is for each of those particular bills. And in total, there's different I don't have it in front of me, but each of the licenses has a different renewal. So some would be in 24 and some would be in 25. So based on the number of out-of-state applicants that would be in compact states, the estimate would be about a $50,000 loss for fiscal year 24, and then a $54,000 loss in fiscal year 25, for a total loss of about $105,000 over a 2-year period. Now, this is based on what we know of states that have already signed on to these particular compacts. To the extent that other states sign on as well, each of these has other states like Vermont that are reviewing them and have legislation about them. So to the extent that other states sign on to these compacts, the revenue losses could be a little bit higher. As we just heard, there would be some offsets depending on what the fees would be. I've sort of run some scenarios of what the offsets would be. If you did 50 or 75 or $100, or you split them up, and they would offset the losses by anywhere from a quarter if you did $50 to about half of if you did $100 as a pass-through. No, I shouldn't call it a pass-through. I should call it.
Please don't.
Yeah. If we did our state fee. And then finally, what Lauren talked about, the needs, and I think she covered that well in terms of staffing versus IT needs. There would definitely need to be some. I think they would definitely need some resources, I think, to sort of offset these losses. So that's the high overview of what's in my memo.
And Nolan, I know you have TBD on the new compact fee revenue.
Yeah.
If we were setting a fee explicitly at the $50 or whatever, would that still be a TBD, or would you estimate from there?
I could easily estimate. Actually, I already have. So if you did 50 for each of those, it would give you a revenue of about $27,000 total.
Okay. So then we'd be out about 75 still.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Representative Brannigan.
Nolan, do you know if these, the estimated out-of-state applicants, those are new people coming into the state, right? And excuse me, go ahead.
No, please finish your question, sorry.
And I also want to know if that would cover the shortfall. So in each of these categories, we need people coming into the state to practice, to meet the needs of the people who are already here. So if we were to draw in 254, 212, and 70 applicants, from out of state, would that cover our needs? So the
No.
75,000, it'd almost be worth it in my mind because
No.
we're filling the need.
So those are numbers of people that are already currently licensed in Vermont from out of states.
Oh,
And those are those people that are currently paying for a full Vermont license that live in states that have signed on to the compact. So they would no longer be paying the Vermont fee, and instead they'd be paying the compact fee, which is lower. That's why it's a loss. So it does not take into consideration recruiting even more people, which could happen.
I see. I apologize. I haven't had time to read all the memo. I'm only looking at the chart and my assumption was that those were new people. So sorry, my mistake.
No, I could have been clear in my chart.
Representative Sims and then Representative.
And it looks like you're estimating these as one-time revenue losses. Can you explain why it's only one time?
It's not one time. It is, they're renewed on 2-year cycles. So this is the loss in 24, that's the loss in 25, and in 26 and 27, it would flip-flop again. And it might even increase as more states sign on to compacts.
Nolan, will you clarify both of those things in the memo?
Yep.
Or 3 things, I guess. Thanks, Representative Anthony.
It would help me if we only used the phrase compact fee or compact license where it was explicit. In these proposals, I think we're talking about a privilege fee that we set. There is, as far as I know, nothing in the compact language which establishes a compact license, except in the past in nurses. So that phrase confuses me every time anybody uses it.
Representative Taylor.
How does this interact with telehealth? If somebody out of state joins a compact, can they telehealth to here, or are they going to be moving to the state or not?
That's a question for legislative council.
Oh, okay,
Which will be available in 5 minutes.
I can wait.
Yes. Nolan, can you take us through the other fiscal notes, actually?
Sure.
Thanks.
Let's start with 62. So that's the counseling one.
Can you not start with 62 since that's the only one
Okay.
we haven't had a walkthrough on yet, and do 77 and 86?
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Let's do 77. So if you look at 77, let's just go to the summary. So the estimated revenue loss for this one would be 32,800. And what that includes is that's a combination of an estimated loss of 31,800 from the fees and another 2,000 from the application fees. So that would be a total loss of 32,800. As I said, if more states join the PT compact, revenues would be greater. Some revenue losses would be offset. Lauren talked a little bit about this particular one, how the average, I looked at what the other states are, and it's some states are charging nothing. I forget which state it was. There was one state, South Carolina, Arizona and South Carolina did not have a privilege fee. Mississippi had a $150 privilege fee, but the median and the mode were 50. The median obviously being the middle and a mode being the fee that came the most. That was the most popular fee. So if Vermont did a $50 compact fee, that would be 10,600. So it would offset the loss of 32,000 by 10,600. And then again, we talked about how more staff are needed and more resources are needed. You can see there's a chart on there that shows what total licensees, and this is for both physical therapists and physical therapist assistants. And so you can see you have 212 licensees that are current compact states that have signed on to the compact. And then we have another 1,246 from other states. This is not including Vermonters. This is just folks from other states. So to the extent that some of these other states, which I believe there were 10 other states that currently have pending legislation, including Vermont. So to the extent that any of these other states are in one of those 10, some of those more of those people could be potentially siphoned off into paying instead of paying the in-state fee of $150, they could be paying a lower privilege fee of, let's say, $50. So there's where the revenue loss would be. So that's the high level overview for 77.
I think that does it. Thanks. Let's do 86.
Okay, so unlike 77, excuse me, the PT compact is in place and it is up and running. This is the audiology speech pathology one. It is not up and running yet. Currently, there are 23 states, including New Hampshire, that have joined the compact. And then there are 9 states, including Vermont, that have legislation pending. So again, I'll refer you to the chart on the back. You can see that there are, I break it out again between compact states. So these are states that have signed on to the compact, and other states. These are out-of-state licensees that are in other states that have not signed on to the compact. So this is a much lower population. You can see there's 76 audiologists and 636 SLPs, speech language pathologists. The estimate for this is 17,200. So 16,800 of that is a loss of the fee, and about 400 of that is loss of application licenses. Again, as I mentioned, to the extent that any of those other folks from those other states, which I mentioned, there were 9 other states that have legislation pending. So to the extent that any of those folks are in any of those 9 states, and those 9 states decide to sign on to the compact, revenue losses could be slightly higher. Again, pass through, I did a little bit of math on this one. And if you did a $50 license fee, it would only bring in $3,500. So you'd lose 17,200. We did 50, you'd only offset the privilege fee would only offset to about $3,500. I'm going to change that pass through to privilege fee in my future fiscal notes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that's the high level overview of this one. It's pretty much the same sort of methodology, the same rationale. Difference being that, like the counseling compact, this has not been in place yet, and the bylaws and the rules are still being written for these particular groups. My understanding.
Thank you. So Katie's going to be joining us in a moment. I think we'll take a 5-minute stretch. Nope, we won't. Hi.
Hi.
Perfect timing.
Okay.
Thank you, Nolan. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's spring outside.
It is. It's beautiful. Katie McGlynn, Office of Legislative Counsel. I know you want to review the counseling compact, so I'm wondering what will work best for you. Should I load it up and put it on the screen? I haven't.
We're going to look at our own screens, but before we get to that, so we have already gone through 77 and 86.
Okay.
So we understand the construct, I think.
Okay.
Already. And the big question we have for you, which is sort of the next step after you walk us through this, is that we have heard that the nature of the compact is that we cannot change the compact language itself. But there is no fee setting or privilege setting fee in any of that language. It's quite vague. And so we would like to add statutory language that wraps around the compact
Yep.
for all three, or I think there's 2 more on their way, or 1 more on their way.
I think there's probably at least one more on it.
Okay. For all of those.
Okay.
That set the fee.
Okay,
And so would A, love to know how that works,
yep,
and B, have you draft it if it does work?
sure.
And for the compacts that don't quite exist yet, maybe build in some sort of trigger language into that. And for the compacts that do, just do the regular fee setting.
Okay.
And so do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to walk us through the thing first?
The order doesn't matter. Just trying to think this through a little bit. So there are different attorneys taking on different compacts. So if you want something consistent throughout, we might need to all get together and sort of have one approach.
Yes.
Yes. As you know,
Never introduce yourself.
oh, I'm sorry, Katie McGlynn, Office of Legislative Counsel. I don't spend much time in this committee. I'm typically in Human Services, occasionally in healthcare, but it's nice to be here with y'all. So as you know, the compact language itself can't change, but if you're looking at what came out of healthcare, for example, you'll see that they added a section 2 to their bill, which is amending the green books, the statutes, to include a requirement about fingerprinting. So it is related to the compact. It is not in the compact itself. It gives OPR the authority to do fingerprinting. So I imagine what you're looking to do is something similar to that. You would add a section 3 to this bill pertaining specifically to a fee, and you'd have a specific language that you want or a specific fee that you want to set for individuals who are in compact states outside of Vermont who want the privilege to practice in Vermont.
Okay.
So I imagine that's what it would look like.
Oh, that sounds very straightforward when you describe it.
Okay, and I will, if it's okay, work with, is OPR here? OPR's not here. I'd work with Lauren to try to make sure that that works properly in her Title 26.
Okay, and then is it just you and Amarin, or is there a third member of the council working?
Tim Devlin has also been involved in some of the compacts from GovOps, so a lot of compacts moving this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will coordinate with them and we can get you language.
Could it be sooner rather than later?
Sooner, sounds great. Do you have a sense of what is the fee structure you're looking to put in place?
$50.
Okay, per person from a remote state coming in?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, Representative.
From what I've heard from Nolan, I think it should be double that, Madam Chair.
What I've heard from the committee and what feels quite clear to me is that's the fee that was requested by Lauren and by OPR. We know that no matter what we do, it's going to be insufficient. And so, and that we need to restructure things. And that likely they will need to come back and change those fees in the future anyway. But if we want to sort of test the concept of compacts, we might want to do it, taking the guidance of OPR. But let's have it drafted and then we can sort of talk through that.
sure. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Tell us about this bill that we.
Sure. So I think now that Amarin has sort of discussed at least 1 or 2 compacts with you, you sort of have the general idea of how a compact is set up. So in this case, the counseling compact regulates what in Vermont we call licensed mental health counselors. In different states, they might refer to them differently, but that's sort of the population that's being captured. Once a state chooses to enter the compact, that means that a Vermont practitioner, a Vermont licensed mental health counselor, has the ability to apply to another compact state, and it's sort of like an expedited route into getting a license in that state. Meaning that if there are 16 compact states and a Vermont practitioner chooses only to practice in 2 other compact states, they don't have to be licensed in all the compact states. They can just select those 2 to practice in. And then sort of the opposite is true, that somebody from a compact state outside of Vermont who would like to practice in Vermont has sort of an expedited process to be able to practice in this state. They have to notify the commission, the Council and Compact Commission, that they are planning to do this. There are fees related. And now you're adding a fee for that person from outside the state who wants to apply to work in Vermont. So that is sort of the big picture. If you would like a more detailed walkthrough, I've put together a summary. It's 5 pages. I can.
Oh, I love that.
Okay. I know it's dense, so if it becomes too in the weeds, let me know and we can come up a little bit higher. So there's a purpose statement. That's the first section of the compact. I'm going to skip over that for now. There's a definition section. My summary sort of pulls out some of the definitions that you might be most interested in, including what is this commission that we're talking about. Each compact has sort of a central governing body, and in this case, it's a commission. We're using the term licensed professional counselor to mean what we say in Vermont as a licensed mental health counselor. In terms of state participation in the compact, to participate in the compact, a state must license and regulate licensed professional counselors, require licensees to pass a national exam approved by the commission, require licensees to have a certain number of hours of a master degree in counseling and graduate work in specified topic areas, require licensees to complete a supervised postgraduate professional experience as defined by the commission, and have a mechanism in place for receiving and investigating complaints about licensees. Member states are required to participate in the commission's data system. So the commission, the governing body for the Counseling Compact, has a central database that states are submitting information to about licensees. A member state has to notify the commission of any adverse action or the availability of investigative information about a licensee, implement or utilize procedures for considering applicants' criminal history records, comply with commission rules, require applicants to obtain or retain a license in the home state, and meet home state qualifications for licensure renewal. I'm going to pause and just take a step back to the previous bullet when we talked about rules. The commission has the authority to adopt its own rules, and those are binding on all compact states. So there might be a rule that is not contemplated in this compact. All the compact states have a seat on the commission, so Vermont would have a representative participating in that rulemaking process, but there is a process by which additional fine-tuning and additional rules of the compact could come about in the future. I'm at the bottom of page 1. Member states.
When that happens, do we then need to amend?
No, just like, it's like our process with rulemaking. So there are rules going through all the time, but we're not amending the green books to reflect that. They sort of exist side by side. Member states are required to grant privilege to practice to a licensed holding a valid unencumbered license in another state in accordance with the compact and its rules. The top of page 2, provide for attendance of the state's commissioner at a Counseling Compact Commission meeting. Also, this allows member states to charge a fee for granting privilege to practice. That's what we've just been talking about. It allows individuals not residing in a member state to be able to apply for a member state's single state license, but a single state license granted to these individuals shall not be recognized as granting privilege to practice professional counseling in any other member state.
Can you point us to the specific line where that is?
In the bill itself, I have to pull both up. That's okay.
Love that.
72, 75.
Excited.
Okay, page 10 of the bill is introduced. That language is coming from subsection D. Individuals not residing in a member state shall continue to be able to apply for a member state single state license as provided under the laws of each member state. However, the single state license granted to these individuals shall not be recognized as granting privilege to practice professional counseling in any other member state.
Yeah, Representative Manton.
That suggests, as I think we all understand, that once the board or the administration of the compact is established with their rules, they will add an administrative fee that essentially allows them to fund, if you will, the data keeping and whatnot of people who want to travel, so to say. And that's unsaid, and there's no, at the moment, no clarity as to at what level that might be. But
Right.
it's suggested in every one of those
Yeah,
documents.
there's language in the next section, and like you said, it's very vague. It says that there could be applicable fees that have to be paid to the commission, including possibly state fees. So it's pretty vague. Okay, should I keep moving, or do you want to pause there?
No, you can keep moving. I just want to, when we get to these sections, I want to look at the actual statutory language rather than the
Yep.
repeat.
Okay, that makes sense. So I'm still on page 2. I'm at the very end of 3275C. A license issued to the professional counselor by a home state to a resident in the state shall be recognized by member states as authorizing the licensed professional counselor to practice professional counseling in each member state. And that brings us to 7257D, which is pretty much the densest section of this bill. This says to exercise the privilege of practicing in a remote state, a licensee shall. So they have to hold a license in a home state, have a valid social security number or national practitioner ID, be eligible for privilege to practice in a member state on the basis of meeting certain criteria, not have any encumbrance or restriction against any license or privilege to practice in the preceding 2 years, notify the commission that the licensee is seeking privilege in a remote state, pay applicable fees, including state fees. So let me try to bring you right to that language. That is page 11, line, I'm on the bill as introduced, if that helps. Page 11, line 15.
So that says fines. Right?
Sorry.
Am I in the wrong one?
I'm on the bill as introduced, not the committee report that came out of healthcare. And on my page 11, line 15, the lead-in language is to exercise the privilege.
Got it.
Got it? Okay.
Too many tabs.
Okay. I'll keep moving here. So this is still under the ability to exercise privilege to practice. Meet continuing competence and education requirements of the home state, meet any jurisprudence requirements of the remote state or states in which the licensee is seeking privilege to practice, report to the commission any adverse action, encumbrance, or restriction on a license by a non-member state within 30 days of action. The privilege to practice expires when the home state license expires. Licensees providing professional counseling in a remote state under privilege to practice must follow the law of that remote state. Licensees providing a professional counseling in a remote state are subject to the remote state's regulatory authority, which may include removing licensee's privilege to practice for a period of time, imposing fines, or taking other action. Licensee may be ineligible for privilege to practice in other member states until the time period has elapsed or the fine is paid. If the home state license is encumbered, the licensee shall lose privilege to practice in remote states until the home state license is unencumbered and the license has not had an encumbrance or restriction on privilege to practice within the preceding 2 years. Whereas the licensee may lose the privilege to practice in other remote states if the privilege to practice is removed from any other remote state until a period of time has elapsed. Fines are paid and the licensee has not had an encumbrance or restriction against a license or privilege to practice within the preceding 2 years. Okay, at the top of page 3, 3275E has to do with the process for obtaining a new home state license based on privilege. I don't know if you want all of the details or a little bit higher level here. Section 3275 has to do with the process for what would constitute a home state for an active duty military personnel or that person's spouse. 3275G, compact privilege to practice telehealth. The member state shall recognize right of professional licensed counselor to practice professional counseling in any member state via telehealth under the privilege to practice, and the licensee providing professional counseling services in a remote state shall adhere to the laws of the remote state. Then we have another fairly dense section about adverse actions. That's 3275H. A remote state has the authority to take adverse action against a licensed professional counselor's privilege to practice within that member state and issue subpoenas for hearings and investigations requiring attendance and testimony of witnesses and production of evidence. Only a home state can take an adverse action against a licensed professional counselor's license issued in the home state. With regard to taking adverse action, a home state shall give same priority to the reported conduct received from a member state as if the conduct occurred in the home state with regard to an investigation and a response to an investigation. The home state completes any pending investigations of a licensed professional counselor who changes primary state of residence mid-investigation. The member state can take adverse action based on factual findings of a remote state. This provides guidelines on what a joint investigation would look like between member states. If adverse action is taken by a home state, the licensed professional counselor's privilege to practice in all member states will be deactivated until all encumbrances of the home state license are removed. The compact doesn't prohibit a member state to participate in an alternative program in lieu of adverse action. Okay, I'm at the top of page 4 of my summary. This section governs the establishment of the Counseling Compact Commission. I don't know if you want this in great detail. The idea, as I said before, is that this compact authorizes a commission that's made up of the member states. Each member state has one delegate selected by the state's licensing board, who is either administrator or a member of the licensing board who sits on this Counseling Compact Commission. Compact Commission meets at least once annually, and there's a list of all the duties that the commission has. I'm going to skip to the data system next. Section 3275J. So the commission shall provide for the development, maintenance, and operation and utilization of a coordinated database and reporting system pertaining to licensure, adverse action, and investigation information on all licensed individuals in member states. Member states are required to submit uniform data to the system. Member states contributing information to the data system may designate information that may not be shared with the public without express permission. And any data submitted that is subsequently required to be expunged by the laws of the member state shall be removed from the data system. Rulemaking, section 3275K, this sort of, yes.
I went backwards for a minute.
Okay, nope.
And I was scanning through the full bill on the establishment of the commission.
Mm-hmm.
Just check to see if they have fee-making ability, and I didn't see that anywhere. But I'm wondering if you see that anywhere and I have missed it.
No, I'm not seeing it either.
Great.
It outlines, subsection F outlines how the commission is financed, but not fee setting, no. Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, okay.
Back to flying.
Okay. 30.
Questions now too, or shall we hold?
Are they questions that are they along the way questions?
Yes.
Please.
So my question, it goes back on this bill is introduced, let's see, it's page number 16, starts on line 3, 3275F, the active duty military personnel and their spouses, or their spouses. So some of us have talked outside of committee about this whole bill and wondering about why military personnel are picked out, or why not like a college professor who comes to Vermont and his wife, or any kind of a factory worker and his spouse too, or her spouse. Is there something about the military that we have to specifically mention them, or why do we do this?
It's a good question, and it's not a question I can answer. It would be a question that maybe OPR would be in a better position to answer. I don't know if you've had a chance to specifically speak to the folks who developed the compact, but because this language comes to us, we are not part of the conversation of how they made the decisions that they made.
All right, I'll do that. Thank you.
Representative Canfield.
So on the duties of the forming the commission, I'm on page 1, line 12. Purchase and maintain insurance and bonds. Is that for liabilities of the commission? There's litigation or?
Sorry, which subdivision are you on?
21.
You said page 21.
Establishment of the commission.
Yep.
Commissioners bonding, I think.
Yeah, yeah, page 21, line 12.
Establish the fiscal year of the commission. Are you on the, we're looking at two different versions. Are you on the bill as introduced?
Yeah, I thought I was.
Okay.
Anyhow, purchase and maintain insurance and bonds, that's my question.
Purchase and maintain, oh, okay. So why do they have that authority?
Why do they need it?
I think that's a good question. I think I have the same answer, which is I wasn't privy to the decision-making. Yeah, when they came up with this language, it just came to us fully formed, and it's sort of we voluntarily enter or no. So I don't know the rationale behind why that was included.
So I have a list for OPR, which is the military question from yesterday and the bonding ability. Representative Esmay.
Under the rubric of mobility, which presumably is what's driving part of this, I noticed that in this one, I don't know if it's common, the requirement is for a social security number. That means citizen. You could practice, you could be employed with a TIN number, but SS numbers are citizen. And I'm wondering, given we're encouraging people to emigrate to the United States and not just, but including professionals, this, as everybody knows, a long way to citizenship. So you're essentially saying somebody who comes here with a degree in counseling or whatever
Where
from,
the bill is up?
you read it.
Yep,
It was
trying to find
part
it.
of the requirements in the compact language. Not that we can change it, but it flagged it as soon as, mentally, as soon as you read it. I don't remember it in the other proposals.
The other piece of that is it's social security number. I'm not finding it right off the bat, or it's the healthcare provider number. National practitioner ID number. And I don't know what the citizenship requirements are for that. So if you're making a list
Well,
for OPR, I think it would.
I would ask
that would-
Lauren
yeah.
and see,
What are the
maybe they
citizens?
have that requirement too, and I'm just unaware of it.
Okay. So I'm going to keep moving if that's okay. We covered data system. We covered the concept of rulemaking, that the commission has the authority to adopt rules that are binding on compact states. In the middle of page 5, section 3275L, this section governs oversight, dispute and resolution and enforcement. It directs the executive, legislative and judicial branches of member states to enforce the compact as it has the effect of statutory law. If the commission finds that a member state has defaulted on the performance of its duties under the compacts or rules, the commission shall provide written notice to the defaulting state and remedial training and technical assistance. A state that fails to cure a default may be terminated from the compact upon a majority vote of the member states. Commission is not responsible for costs related to a state in default. Let's see, member states can request to attempt to resolve disputes through dispute resolution, and the commission enforces the provisions of the compact. The next section, 3275M, this has to do with the date of implementation of the counseling compact, associated rules, withdrawal of the compact. So this language says that the compact takes effect when the 10th member state signs. So at this point, we're above that.
Okay.
Member.
So having our fee language match something like that might be helpful.
Yes, can you give me a little bit more on that?
the amendment that includes the fees, we want to make sure it sort of parallels the actual creation of the compact.
Okay.
So in this one, you said we're at the 10th member, so we might not need that, but for some of the other compacts,
Oh, I see.
at that point yet, so we might need trigger language rather
Okay. So
than,
if a compact hasn't been enacted, if compact not yet enacted, try to language. Is it $50 for all? I wonder if we just add one section instead of repeating it every time there's a compact that comes through.
I will leave it to you to figure out which would
Okay.
work best in statute.
One time, okay,
Thank you.
yep.
And we, yes,
It also bears to say that that could fluctuate. One could go up to 100 and one could stay at.
the fees
50,
might,
so
yes, thank you. Yeah, we might use different fees in the future.
Oh, so you want the
Yeah.
separate sections, got it,
Thank you.
okay,
Yes, yeah.
okay,
And we
you have to go.
do have to go.
Okay.
And three of us.
We mostly got to the end.
Get that there's an effective date on the bill. Thank you.